this is worrying for me. Most of you know, as a lawyer, I kind of been in the courts. I defend the courts. I defend our legal system. I think it's compared to many countries in the world, it's one of the best. It still has a reasonable opportunity for fairness. But over the past 20 years of me being in law, I've seen a decline both in the way that we're extending legislation to hurt individual freedom of speech, going way beyond what our principles were as common law, allowing the kind of legal system in both police and in terms of the judges to take much more of an interpretive value, which I blame on Tony Blair and its extension of two elements: legislation, and this is going to be one of them that we're going to deal with, the courts being out of the hands of the lawyers themselves and just having no political input, and that's why we have the Supreme Court, which just allows those who are within the select group to make the decisions on them, unlike the US, where at least you get a balance between Democrats and Republican sides of the argument. And this latest one is really, really one that I'm going to run through. It's about Hamit Koskin, and some of you may have watched the stories, some of you may have not, but Hamit Koskin was 2 days ago convicted for burning the Quran in public.
Wow, he was guilty of burning a Quran in public.
Burning a Quran in public, although, we'll go into the depths of it. The judge said it's not about burning the Quran itself, it's about what else he did around the burning of the Quran.
It's just a coincidence that
yes,
it's happened after he burned a Quran.
Yeah, and so this is about Hamit Koskin, who is an individual. He spent 10 years in Egyptian prison as a political refugee in many ways, because he challenged the Egyptians.
Is he not Turkish?
Is it Turkish?
I think he's Turkish.
It's Turkish, but I think he was imprisoned in one of them, either Turkey or Egypt, for his political views. So he is a man of principle against the way that Islam works, and the way that Islam works with freedom of speech and democracy. So what I've got here is that's what he was convicted of. Now here we're going to move on to a little bit of what else he said. So he burnt the Quran and shouted "fuck Islam," and Islam is a religion of terrorism. So he was convicted of an aggravated public order offence and must pay a fine.
Right.
And he argued that this was effectively a blasphemy law and also against his human rights.
It's worse than a blasphemy law, because he's not going to get arrested if he says F Christianity. Christianity is a religion of terrorism.
No,
you won't receive anything. So what this is a religion, is a law that specifically protects Islam in particular.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to see, and that's what lots of people say. But I want you to look at those two words, fuck Islam, and Islam is a religion of terrorism. Bear them in mind as we're going through this show and how we're going through the evidence before it gets to you, and you're going to sit yourself on the court as a judge at this particular time. So the reactions have been obvious. The Spectator, David Shipley, is now saying England now has a blasphemy law. I cannot disagree with that. You have James Price, Britain now has a blasphemy law, but only for the religion of Islam, which is exactly what we're saying.
And that's honestly, I think that's worse than actually having a blasphemy laws. If it was like, okay, you can't insult any religion, okay, I don't like it, but at least it is a universal law. No, this is the kind of law that we would have in an Islamic state. If you go to Pakistan, you can do whatever you want to the Bible, but you'll get lynched.
Absolutely.
And then prosecuted probably after your lynching if you burn a Quran.
I do wonder if someone was actually managed to escape Pakistan for their lynching and managed to argue that they should be an asylum seeker, whether they'd be sent back or not. And I think that probably would be one of the only occasions that they do send them back.
That's Christians.
So, I want to let everyone know we've had sessions on the Trivium which have worked out really, really well. And if you've not looked at it, you've not read it, if you've not even joined up, then you should do, because it's impressive. And Carl is rereading the rhetoric section now, going through it, because it's really good. So you've got an opportunity to buy the whole lot at $375. It's been extended for a period of time, because obviously lots of people have different paydays, they've got different ways where they're getting the money in. So there's an opportunity for you to get each of the individual bundles at $150 each, or take the lot at $375, which makes a lot more sense. If you do so. And so get in it, get the Trivium, and let us know whether you're enjoying it or not. But interestingly on this, what James Price follows on to the next one, is that why do you think that the population of Britain won't be aggrieved why banning criticism of Islam will definitely not have any negative consequences. If you want to cause division in society, is this not an example of a particular case that will elevate that division, elevate the anger, and elevate the fact that we have a two-tier system of justice in this country?
It's hard to say it's not a two-tier system.
Yeah. So I think he's right on there. Robert Jemmett is interesting. He points out that for Christianity, blasphemy was abolished in 2008, 17 years ago, and that Starmer defended a woman who trampled on the American flag.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Of course he did.
But today, where was Starmer on this issue? Where do we think he was? And
Well, I assume he was like, well, we don't want to insult Islam, chaps.
No. He was probably trying to find a way of saying, look, I've just done a deal with Kazakhstan. Or maybe I'm just going to fly out to see Zelensky again, my mate, one more time on the international, rather than deal with this particular issue. I think General Keir is standing once more quite strongly on this. He said the fate is grotesque. It's true. Now, here is where you've got to get this point. This is where it starts to bring in a little bit. Remember those words, fuck Islam and Islam is the peace. He was allegedly stabbed in broad daylight.
Well, it's not even allegedly. You can see the video.
Yeah. I see the video. I haven't seen that one.
Oh yeah, the video is some insane guy who's screeching, "You're attacking my religion."
Yeah,
wielding this knife.
Yeah, so he runs out of the embassy or something like that.
Yeah.
And stabs him for burning the book. And there he is. And a Kurdish Armenian atheist. That's what he is, protesting Erdogan. Not only that, someone on a Deliveroo jumped off his Deliveroo bike and kicked him in the head. So that's one way of delivering your pizza, I suppose.
Just be aware, these people are all around us in our country. They're just getting on with their lives, except they believe that you should die if you burn the Quran.
Now, to be fair...
just warning, next time you order a pizza, when you open the door, don't
have
keep
a
burning
Quran.
Yeah. That might get you in some trouble.
But if you burn a Bible, you'll get a discount.
Probably.
That's right. And so what we've got now is, you can see this is building up. He's been stabbed in broad daylight by someone who said he shouldn't be burning it, and he was kicked in the head. Now, to be fair, both of these individuals were charged with assault, although their cases have been pushed back until after summer. Not as important as his, the victim of this particular issue. And
I'm sure if anything were to happen to them, the ECHR would step in to make sure that nothing bad actually happens anyway.
Yeah. So I'm going to examine a little bit, very quickly running through for people here. This is one of the acts that he was charged with. He was charged with two particular offences. The first is the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. And we're looking down here. It's Section 3. And in there, racially or religiously aggravated public order offences. I've never been comfortable with public order offences ever since I started looking at them and learning about them in university on the law and when I was doing the bar, because it always struck me that the way that they were open for interpretation was a simple way of the governments being able to stop people from being able to protest lawfully, whether I liked that protest or not. But here was an extension. The extension here is racially and religiously aggravated. And in order for that to be guilty, a person, and I look at Section C of this, harassment, alarm, or distress.
Well, I mean, I feel I've been racially aggravated against when someone tries to stab someone for burning a Quran.
Yeah, I'm
that
alarmed.
Distresses me.
Yes, and I'm alarmed by it. And I'm alarmed if I see someone of a racially different background or religion stabbing somebody else of a different religion or background. So why that person? So why that person who stabbed him isn't also charged with this particular offence is concerning for me. But I want to look at those words: harassment, alarm, or distress.
Side as well. Like you'll notice that the racial laws are only ever used against the native white majority. The grooming gangs would have been a really solid example of racial hate crimes, and yet none of them, as far as I'm aware, were charged with anything like that.
I mean, in this case, that's not entirely true, given the person who's being charged under them is Kurdish Armenian.
Good point.
Kurdish Armenian. But in this case, all it means that this is a particular situation where we have imported both sides of this conflict.
Right.
Which is always the most fun. It's like Leicester.
I like the way we've identified the white side of the conflict as well.
Oh yeah, I suppose so.
Like the one who's against Islam, that's the white one.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say that we've got to be concerned about this particular one because it's a summary conviction. of 6 months, or a fine not exceeding the maximum. I didn't check out what the maximum is, but it's normally more than £2,500. But I am deeply concerned about the fact that a person is guilty of harassment, alarm, or distress. When we look into how the judges interpreted this, and how that will impact us on this show, or when you do any interviews, or when you write any articles, or indeed when you talk about it at work, or anywhere, to be quite frankly. So this is the judgment of the case, including the sentence remarks.
So who brought the charges against Hamit Koskin?
The Crown Prosecution.
So the state has decided.
The state has decided.
Right. So
initially they did charge it about religiously related to the Quran as almost blasphemy, and then they were forced out to doing that by generic. So they changed it into a public order offence, which, as some people will come to and says, it's basically blasphemy through the back door.
Yeah. By God, they're going.
Couldn't do it through the front door.
Sorry, by Allah, they're going to defend Islam.
Yeah. And here's the interesting point here. He held it aloft whilst he shouted, "Fuck Islam," and Islam is a religion of terrorism, and Quran is burning. At the time he's doing so, and in doing so he's motivated by hostility towards members of a religious group, namely followers of Islam, based on their membership of that group. So if you criticize somebody who is a member of a religious group, namely Islam, and you do so that causes them alarm or distress or harassment, you are now guilty of this public order offence if you do it outside in the public, and not necessarily at home. That's a wholly different offence, which gives you an NCHI.
I like the way that's not legal. That's just a different offence.
Yeah, that's just a different offence that you get. But there is where he says it very clearly. This is about hostility towards members of a religious group. Let's work on a number of impacts of this. And so he further comes down. He says it's disorderly behaviour within the hearing or sight of a person likely to be caused harassment, alarm, or distress by holding aloft and saying "fuck Islam," contrary to Section 5 of the Public Order Act.
Sorry, just a quick thing here. Like, as if it's the law's job to make sure that nobody is alarmed. I must exist in a state of tranquility at all times.
Yep.
Never experience anything that might cause me to be slightly alarmed or distressed.
Yep.
Or else the Crown Prosecution will come down on you, assuming you're not a Muslim. It's just wild.
Yeah, and I find it utterly in a world of very strange communistic determination of what is people's opinions, views, values, and we're now going to suppress them within this ideology of threatening. Not even threatening, it's just harassment and abuse.
But if you have like a large number of Muslims praying in public, there's no way that could be considered to be alarming or distressing, even though I might find that alarming or distressing.
Well, I would agree that within this definition, someone would legitimately be able to call that alarming and distressing. Is it threatening behaviour? No, which is what, or abusive?
I don't think he was threatening anyone.
No. This is the incredible element about it is when you run through here. He keeps saying he shouted, "Islam is a religion of terrorism, and the Quran is burning." And a man came out and said, "You're a fucking idiot." The defendant responded, "Fuck you," repeatedly. So what we've got...
I've seen a video of this incident.
So what you've got is, "You're a fucking idiot, fuck you. You're a fucking idiot, fuck you." And then, unfortunately, we'll probably not be allowed on YouTube because of this now with that swearing. But the point is that when he says, "Islam is the religion of terrorism and fuck Islam," it's after he'd been stabbed. He said those words after he was stabbed.
Well, might be some mitigating circumstance.
What would he? Well, the point was the judge actually said he is convicting him not because of the burning of the book, but because where he was, the position he was in, and the words that he used. Fuck Islam, and Islam is terrorism. But he didn't do that to cause harassment. He was doing that after he'd been stabbed. So he stood there initially silently burning the book.
Yeah.
So how could that cause harassment alarm? And secondly, the judge goes on to say it was obviously harassment and alarm because a man came out and stabbed you. So you obviously caused someone harassment and alarm. So you're victim blaming.
He is
somebody who silently burnt a book, didn't swear until after he'd been stabbed, which obviously after you've been stabbed, you might say, I'm deeply sorry, young man, that hurts.
I wouldn't be holding back.
No.
Might be difficult.
And so what we have then is clearly this part of the judgment is particularly absurd because the process was reasonable because he used the word fuck. That was ludicrous enough. So we go pick up some of the points. The defendant had raised evidence that his actions were a protest. Fine. He was exercising his rights under the ECHR. Allegedly, fine. Prosecution must make sure he's not acting unreasonably or acting reasonably. The defendant's action burning the Quran were highly provocative.
Oh, right.
It's his actions accompanied by bad language, in some cases directed towards the religion, that was motivated by at least hatred of the followers of that religion. And that's why his conduct is not reasonable.
He'd just been stabbed.
Yeah. It's not. He's there
by a Muslim.
Yeah. And a man said he was going to kill the defendant. He went back inside and came out shortly and launched a savage attack on the defendant with a knife, kicked, spat the defendant, was also kicked by a passing delivery driver who only used the F word after he'd been called a fucking idiot.
The implication is that this is perfectly reasonable.
Yes.
He's being unreasonable by swearing and insulting Islam, but it's perfectly reasonable for the Muslims to come out with a knife and say, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, so I've got this situation. You're burning a book, and the judge is saying burning the book on its own is not an issue.
Yeah.
It becomes an issue when you burn the book
Someone
in
stabs
public
you.
in a certain place, and that place is outside the Turkish embassy. You caused harassment and alarm because somebody stabbed you.
Yeah.
So rather than them being the person who is definitely,
It's a madhouse.
you know, it's the level of it.
Absolutely mad.
And the fact that you swore after you were stabbed is also
Insulted
indicative
Islam after
of your
you were stabbed.
insulting somebody. I
Again,
honestly
The implication is that this is reasonable. This is a reasonable response to him burning the Quran.
Yeah.
This is wild.
And I get Baroness Fox, not only because her name is Fox and therefore I'm Wolf, and I kind of like the whole kind of Fox-Wolf scenario, to be honest. But, you know, she is a former communist. In many ways, and she was a big Brexiteer, still I think holds some communist views, I've got to say. But I wanted to listen to this and, you know, what she says on this, because this is actually highly instructive about she understands the left very well, because she was part of it for a long time.
Should be able to ridicule, mock, make fun of any religion, and not be used.
Oh, it's not loud enough.
Hear this.
Can't hear it, I'm afraid. Just
practice that faith.
Samson, can we...
That's in any faith. There is a danger.
Here's the video. So can you just summarise it?
Yeah.
Islam and people.
She talks about exactly what we've mentioned. First of all, you've got an individual holding a book, and the judge is saying that in itself is fine. You can burn it, but actually indicating you're not really allowed to burn it if someone is harassed. So that clearly is blasphemy through the back door. Yeah. And secondly, you're victim shaming. You know, here you have a man who's been stabbed, and yet he's the one who's now the perpetrator of a particular offence when he's doing nothing, but you're actually allowing people off. And this chap on the right, who is a human rights lawyer, says, no, it's not about burning the book or blasphemy. It's all about a public order offence, deliberately ignoring the fact that the racially aggravated elements of the offence clearly make it.
On the floor, and he's yelling about the person who stabbed him, and some bystander Muslim might feel alarmed or distressed because of the language he used, and that's the public order offence, right? Just so I've got this completely clear.
Yeah.
Right.
Now,
it's just mental.
I'm going to bring in another elements of this before we kind of summarise. Christopher Hitchens, briefly, I'm going to just play a little bit about him in 2009.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are not just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical.
There we go. So that was 2009. He said, let's be careful. I'm giving you a warning. about the use of the word Islamophobia, and now here we have it. It's going through Parliament with a kind of amendments to various pieces of legislation by the Labour Party. Here you have it in public order acts and particular offences, that someone who criticises Islam is now regarded as being a criminal for doing that and has to, at the moment, pay a fine. How long before complete imprisonment? How long before just even discussing the concepts of criticising Sharia law in this country? Because I think a lot of people are saying this is blasphemy by backdoor. I actually, in some ways, think it's almost akin to Sharia law being accepted as part of our common law, because that's exactly what they do. We've been
just
warned.
a quick aside as well. Interesting. Your point is. I thought that this was going to be a race hatred charge, but it wasn't a race hatred charge. No. Whereas if it had been a white guy who had been doing it, it probably would have been a race hatred charge.
That would have been probably dropped on top of it as well.
Yeah. So it would have been worse.
Yeah, I think other charges on that would have been there.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Andrew Tetburn has said. It's two good articles in the Spectator. Brace yourself for more Quran burning trials in Britain. I think when you're looking through that, it's not just about the burning of the Quran, because quite frankly, there will be people who watch this on X or wherever social media, and they're going to go, okay, I'm going to test it now. You know, the judge has said burning the Quran on its own it's not bad. So you've just seen Lawrence Fox burn.
Please don't do that.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying.
We do not recommend you do
No, we don't recommend any criminality. I'm just saying that.
Or even things that technically aren't criminal. I just don't think you should do this.
This article is suggesting that's what people will do.
Probably.
You saw Lawrence Fox burning the LGBT plus QI, whatever flag it was, the other day. And I think people are going to test it. You know, they as this article is suggesting, people might go out and just say, I'm going to stand here and burn it in my garden. Or someone might burn it outside of school. And at what point are they going to be charged with this racially aggravated public order offence? And what they're saying is brace yourself for this, because people are going to rebel on this. And like all people in this country in the past, they test the laws to the limit to find out where they are, and then they can challenge it. But it also means that he's saying on the other side of it, we're going to see more negativity towards those people who oppose Islam or regard it differently. And the courts are going to be caught in a place where they make the decision. And it won't fall on the side of those who are burning the Quran.
No.
Now,
protect Islam.
Now, what I'm saying is we've got a few things that they can do. Obviously, here I hope that he appeals. Yep. And there's a fundraiser being done by the Free Speech Union and the Christian Concern, I think, with the other organisation work with him. But only by him allowed to challenge this. Only by him being able to take this up, because he's the only one convicted of it so far. There you are. It was 10 years in prison in Turkey, not Egypt. Right. So I was wrong for political activism. And I think that should have had some impact on the way that he was addressed, his assessment of it. Yeah. Why? Have we not just had the Labour Party saying that we wanted to change the sentencing practices through the Sentencing Council, which would have said that you look back on what happened to you in the past in your countries? 10 years in prison for Turkey for political activism. Isn't that falling within that scope?
The wrong kind of political activism.
Exactly. So it's going there. He has to do that. I think we've also seen Nick Timothy, actually, who's turned out to be quite good in legal issues. He brings this out in Parliament. He talks about supporting and stopping this bill. He does it very quickly, but
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, a man was convicted of a public order offence after burning a Quran outside the Turkish embassy. The judge said the fact that the man was attacked is proof that he was guilty of disorderly behaviour. This is grotesque and means, in effect, we have a blasphemy law. Does the Justice Secretary believe that this should hold, or will the government back my bill to put an end to all of this madness next week?
Not have a blasphemy law. We are not going to have a blasphemy law in this country. He will be aware that in that specific case, I believe it's going to be subject to an appeal, so it'd be inappropriate for me or any other minister to comment on the details of that matter. But I'm sure once all...
Right, so Labour.
De facto blasphemy law, got it.
De facto blasphemy law, through the back door. Everybody who understands law knows that it is. Yep. Politicians know that it is. Labour saying it's not, and hiding behind the fact that they won't support Nick Timothy in this next week. Rupert Cooper does exactly the same, and I thought I had one by Rupert Lowe. But the really concerning element for me about that is that shows like this now become actively capable, just if we criticise, and somebody sat there saying, I have harassment, I am concerned about this, I'm distressed, that they actually can now put Public Order Act on almost any type of political activity. The only thing that the judge would have to assess is where we are in this building, who is seeing it, and that will be our limited defence. And also, if you're attacked by somebody, you now have proof of you committing that offence because someone attacks you. And that is nonsense. It's obscene and grotesque.
That's wild.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.